poor single mom saved the grandmother of powerful vampire king, and her life was forever changed. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. In the heart of a small, crumbling apartment building, a young woman named Emma sat at the kitchen table, her worn hands gripping a cup of cold coffee. Her life had always been a struggle. A single mother to a 7-year-old boy named Luke, Emma had done everything she could to make sure he never went hungry. But it wasn't always enough. Her job as a waitress barely covered rent, and the bills kept piling up. She often found herself lying awake at night, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how much longer she could keep up this exhausting routine. But despite everything, Emma never stopped fighting. She loved Luke more than anything in this world, and for him, she would do anything. That morning, as Emma walked to her second job delivering groceries, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. The streets were busy with people rushing to and from their daily lives, their faces focused and unaware of the world beyond their own struggles. Emma's thoughts were consumed with her son. She'd promised him a new pair of shoes, but she still didn't have enough money for them. As she neared the grand, intimidating gates of a mansion that she had never even dreamed of entering, she paused. A thought crossed her mind. Should she take the long way around to avoid the wealthy neighborhood? But no, she had a job to do. She had no time for detours. Little did she know, the man who owned the mansion, a powerful figure in the city known only as Lord Valerian, was watching her from his grand window. He had been tracking her movements for weeks, studying her from afar, intrigued by the quiet strength in her that he couldn't quite understand. The mansion was surrounded by an air of mystery, whispers of supernatural events, and secrets hidden deep within its stone walls. As Emma arrived at the entrance, she was greeted by a butler, who silently led her inside. She could feel the weight of the mansion's history bearing down on her, but she kept her composure. She was here to deliver a package, not to be intimidated. The grand hallway stretched before her, with portraits of people she didn't recognize lining the walls. She followed the butler into a sitting room, where she was met by a woman, an older lady with piercing eyes and an aura of calm, despite the grandeur of the room. The woman's name was Lady Victoria, and she was the grandmother of Lord Valerian. Emma could feel the tension in the air as Lady Victoria studied her, as if trying to determine why this seemingly ordinary woman had been chosen to enter their world. But Emma had no time to think about that. She had a job to do, and this was just another delivery. What happened next was something Emma never could have predicted. As she placed the package on the table, she noticed a strange symbol on the edge of the box. It was old, intricate, and familiar, though she couldn't place where she had seen it before. Just as she was about to leave, a sudden noise echoed from the hallway. The door to the room slammed open, and in walked a tall, imposing figure. Lord Valerian, with his sharp features and icy gaze, stared at Emma with an intensity that made her heart race. He didn't say a word at first, but his presence was enough to send a chill down her spine. Emma stood frozen, not knowing what to do, her instincts telling her to run. But before she could make a move, Lord Valerian spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "You are the one, aren't you?" His words hung in the air, and Emma felt her pulse quicken. She had no idea what he was referring to. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "You saved my grandmother," he said, his voice softening slightly. "And for that, your life will never be the same." At that moment, Emma's world shifted. The strange symbol on the package, the intense gaze of Lord Valerian, it all began to make sense. She had just unknowingly crossed into a world of power and danger, a world where her every move would be watched, and where her actions would determine the fate of those she loved. Her life, as she knew it, was about to change forever. Emma stood frozen in the grand room, her heart racing as Lord Valerian's gaze pierced through her. The air around them felt charged, thick with the weight of unspoken words. His tall, imposing figure loomed over her, but it was not just his height that unsettled her. It was the cold intensity in his eyes, a look that seemed to see right through her, as if he knew everything about her before she even spoke. She wanted to say something, to ask him what was happening, but her throat felt tight, and the words just wouldn't come. "You saved my grandmother," Lord Valerian finally said, his voice low and smooth. Emma blinked, still trying to process his words. I didn't mean to do anything special," she stammered. "I was just doing my job, delivering the package." Lord Valerian took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, his voice soft but heavy with meaning. "By saving her, you've crossed into a world you never imagined." Emma's mind spun as she tried to grasp the weight of his words. A world she never imagined? What was he talking about? She was just a poor single mom trying to make ends meet, trying to survive. How had she crossed into some other world? Before she could voice her confusion, Lady Victoria, the grandmother, spoke up, her voice warm and reassuring. "You're special, dear. We know it. And now, so does Lord Valerian." Emma shook her head, feeling more lost by the second. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a delivery girl. I don't have anything special about me." Lord Valerian smiled slightly, though there was no warmth in it. "You might not realize it yet, but you are far more than you believe." He turned to Lady Victoria. "I will make arrangements for her to stay here. She needs to be protected." Emma's stomach churned at the thought of staying here in this mansion, with its cold marble floors and towering, looming walls. It felt like a dream, a strange, unsettling dream that she couldn't wake up from. Lady Victoria nodded, her eyes glinting with something Emma couldn't place. "We'll make sure she's safe, my dear," she said. "You've done something incredible. Don't worry, you'll find your place here soon enough." Still trying to make sense of everything, Emma followed the butler down long hallways, her feet barely making a sound on the cold floors. She had never been in a place like this before. The walls were lined with portraits of people she didn't recognize, and there were fine pieces of furniture that looked as though they belonged in a museum. The place felt empty in a way, like no one really lived here, like it was all just a facade. She was led to a room that was larger than her entire apartment. The bed was enormous, with thick, silken blankets, and the view from the window overlooked a sprawling garden. Emma stared at the room in disbelief. She had never been in a place so grand, so out of reach from the life she had always known. She sat on the edge of the bed, feeling small in the massive room. This couldn't be real. She couldn't belong here. Yet, here she was, being told she had saved the grandmother of a powerful vampire king, and her life would never be the same again. What was she supposed to do with all of this? Her thoughts were interrupted when there was a knock at the door. "Lady Victoria wishes to speak with you," the butler said. Emma nodded, though her heart was still racing. She stood up and followed him down the hallway, trying to steady her breathing. As she entered the room where Lady Victoria was waiting, the older woman smiled at her, her eyes kind yet knowing. "Sit, dear," Lady Victoria said, gesturing to a chair across from her. "We have much to discuss." Emma sat down, her hands trembling in her lap. "What's going on? Why did you bring me here?" Lady Victoria leaned forward, her gaze soft but intense. "You saved me, Emma. And in doing so, you've unlocked something in yourself that you may not even realize yet." Emma frowned, her confusion deepening. "What do you mean? I just delivered bread. That's all." Lady Victoria smiled gently. "It's never just about the bread, dear. It's about who you are. You have a gift, Emma. And now, it's time for you to understand it." Before Emma could ask more questions, Lady Victoria continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "You've entered a world filled with power, with danger, and with secrets. And soon, Lord Valerian will reveal more to you. You'll be part of something much bigger than you ever imagined." Emma swallowed hard, her mind racing with a million questions. How could she be part of something so big? She was just trying to make it through another day. "I'm just a mother," she said softly, almost to herself. "That's all I've ever been." Lady Victoria reached out and took Emma's hand in hers, her grip surprisingly strong. "And that, my dear, is why you are here. Because you are more than just a mother. You are part of this world now. And your life, as you know it, is about to change forever." Emma felt a chill run down her spine as the words sank in. What had she gotten herself into? And how would she ever be able to navigate this new, terrifying world? But one thing was certain, she wasn't going anywhere. This was her reality now, and she would have to find a way to survive in it. Emma sat in the grand drawing room, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The weight of the words Lady Victoria had just spoken hung heavily in the air. "You have a gift, Emma." The words echoed in her head, but what did they mean? She had never felt like anything special. She was just a single mother, struggling to make ends meet, barely scraping by. Now, she was being told she had crossed into a world full of power, danger, and unimaginable secrets. Was it true? Could she really be part of something so much bigger than herself? She was still processing everything, still reeling from the overwhelming changes in her life. As the days passed, Emma found herself adjusting to the strange new world around her. Lady Victoria had insisted she stay in the mansion while she learned more about her gift. Emma spent her days in a luxurious guest room, staring out the window at the sprawling grounds. Everything seemed so alien to her, so out of reach. The mansion was nothing like the small apartment she shared with her son, Luke. It was like a different world altogether, a world where the wealthy and powerful ruled. The staff treated her with a kind of reserved respect, but Emma could tell they were curious about her, wondering what she was doing here. No one, least of all herself, could explain why Lord Valerian had chosen her. One afternoon, as she wandered the mansion's halls, trying to clear her mind, she bumped into a tall, shadowy figure. Lord Valerian. He was standing in front of a large portrait, his back to her, gazing at the painting with an unreadable expression. The moment he heard her footsteps, he turned, his sharp, gray eyes locking with hers. "You're still here," he said, his voice low and smooth. Emma nodded, unsure of what to say. "I don't know why I'm here," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "You saved my grandmother," he replied, stepping closer. "That's why you're here. But it's more than just that. There's something about you, Emma. Something I don't fully understand yet." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. There was an intensity in his voice, a sense of mystery that made her feel both drawn to him and terrified at the same time. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't have anything special. I'm just a mother trying to survive." Lord Valerian studied her for a moment, his gaze penetrating. "You've already begun to tap into something," he said slowly. "Something powerful. I can feel it." Emma's heart raced. She didn't understand. What was he talking about? She had no special powers, no magical abilities. She was just a woman who had lived her life in quiet desperation. "You've been chosen," he continued, his voice softer now. "Chosen to be a part of something ancient. Something that could change everything." Emma felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. The room seemed to spin, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she could stay on her feet. Lord Valerian stepped forward, his presence towering over her. He reached out, his hand brushing against her arm. It was warm, his touch almost too comforting for someone she barely knew. "You have no idea what you've awakened," he said, his tone urgent. "The power inside you is not just a gift. It's a force, and once it's awakened, it cannot be undone." Emma stumbled back, her mind racing. Power? She had power? She had always felt weak, powerless in the face of everything life had thrown at her. "What does this mean for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're a part of this now," Lord Valerian said. "A part of this world, this dynasty. You're connected to something much older, much more dangerous than you can imagine, and you will learn to control it." Emma's head swam with questions, but she was afraid to ask more. Was this a dream? A nightmare? Was she truly meant to be a part of this world of power and secrets? Lord Valerian gave her a solemn look, as if weighing his words carefully. "The truth is, Emma, your life will never be the same. You can either accept this, or you can walk away. But if you choose to stay, you will have to face what's coming." "What's coming?" she asked, her voice shaky. Lord Valerian's expression hardened. "Enemies. Forces who will stop at nothing to get what they want. They will try to use you, to manipulate you, and you will have to be ready." Emma's heart sank. She had already lost so much in her life. Could she really survive this world? Could she protect her son, Luke, in a world where even the powerful were vulnerable? She didn't know. But one thing was clear, her life was no longer in her control. She had entered a world of ancient powers, dangerous alliances, and deep secrets. And somehow, she was at the center of it all. As Emma stood there, her mind reeling from the weight of Lord Valerian's words, she couldn't help but feel the crushing pressure of her new reality. The mansion, with its cold marble floors and towering walls, felt even more alien now. She wasn't just a delivery girl anymore. She wasn't just a single mother trying to survive. She had become a part of something much larger, something she didn't fully understand. Lord Valerian's gaze lingered on her, his intense eyes never leaving hers, and for the first time, she wondered if he could see right through her, into the core of who she truly was. You need to understand, Lord Valerian continued, his voice low but commanding. The power within you is ancient. It's a force that has been dormant for centuries, waiting for someone worthy to awaken it. Emma swallowed hard, her throat dry. But why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm just a normal person. I don't have anything special about me. Lord Valerian took a step forward, his presence overwhelming. That's where you're wrong, Emma. Your bloodline holds the key to something powerful. And now that you've awakened it, you are tied to this world. There's no turning back. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. Her bloodline? What did that even mean? She had no idea what he was talking about, but the look in his eyes told her that whatever it wasn't something she could ignore. What does this mean for me? She asked, her voice shaking. You're a part of this now, Lord Valerian replied, his tone softer now. You will have to learn to control it. And when you do, you'll have the power to shape the future. Emma couldn't even wrap her mind around it. Power? Her? She had always been weak, struggling just to get by. But the more she looked at Lord Valerian, the more she felt a strange sense of certainty in his words. It was like he knew something she didn't, something that could change everything. And what happens if I don't control it? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. Lord Valerian's gaze hardened, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. Then you will be consumed by it, he said, his voice low and dangerous. The forces at play in this world are not kind to those who don't know how to use their power. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She had no choice now. She had to learn, had to figure out what this all meant. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed guidance, and Lord Valerian seemed to be the only one who could give it to her. How do I start? She asked, her voice steadying. Lord Valerian stepped back, his face softening slightly. For now, you will stay here. You'll learn, slowly but surely. You'll train with the others. And when the time comes, you'll be ready to face whatever challenges come your way. And what if I'm not ready? Emma asked, the doubt creeping into her voice. You'll be ready, he said firmly. Because you have to be. The world you've entered is dangerous, and there are those who will do whatever it takes to see you fail. Emma took a deep breath, trying to calm the swirling storm inside. There was no going back now. She had entered a world of power and danger, and she had to find her place in it. As the days passed, Emma found herself training in the mansion's vast halls, learning to harness the power that had awakened within her. She wasn't alone. Other beings, just as powerful as Lord Valerian, trained alongside her. They were all part of this hidden world, a world that operated in the shadows, unseen by most of humanity. The training was intense. Her body ached. Her mind was exhausted, but Emma pushed through. She had no choice. She had to get stronger. For Luke. For herself. One evening, as she practiced her focus in the mansion's garden, she saw a figure approaching in the distance. It was Lord Valerian, his dark figure cutting through the misty night. You're making progress, he said as he neared her. His voice was quiet, but there was a hint of approval in his words. But you're not there yet. Emma nodded, wiping the sweat from her forehead. I'm trying, she said, her voice filled with determination. I know, he replied. But there's more to power than just learning control. You need to understand the consequences of what you're learning. This world, our world, isn't just about strength. It's about choices. It's about making the right decisions when everything around you seems to fall apart. Emma's heart skipped a beat at his words. What was he trying to say? Was she ready for the responsibility that came with all of this? Was she truly prepared to make the right choices? The world is changing, Lord Valerian continued. And you're a part of that change, whether you're ready or not. Emma didn't know what to say. She was scared. Scared of the power inside her. Scared of the responsibility that came with it. But one thing was certain, she couldn't back out now. Her life had changed, and there was no turning back. The choices she made from here on out would shape everything. And she wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of power. But as she looked up at Lord Valerian, she knew one thing for sure. She would fight for her son. She would fight for her place in this world. And whatever came next, she would face it head on. Emma had spent the last few weeks adjusting to the world of power and mystery she had been thrust into. She had trained hard, every muscle in her body aching from the constant exertion. But it wasn't just her body that was being tested, it was her mind, her very soul. She had started to understand the depth of what Lord Valerian had said to her that night. The power inside her was real, and it was growing stronger every day. But so were the dangers. As the days passed, Emma's training became more intense. The mansion was vast, with rooms and halls that seemed endless, and the training grounds were just as expansive. There were no easy days. Every morning, she was up before dawn, training with the other powerful beings who shared this world with her. They were vampires, warriors, beings with abilities far beyond what Emma could imagine. She was beginning to realize that she was the weakest of them all. The fear that had been buried deep inside her was starting to surface. The fear that maybe she wasn't cut out for this. But whenever those doubts crept in, she thought about Luke, her son, and the promise she had made to protect him. That was enough to push her through the exhaustion and the fear. One day, after an especially grueling training session, Emma found herself standing at the edge of the mansion's vast garden. The soft wind blew through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh flowers. It was peaceful here, almost as if the world outside of the mansion didn't exist. But Emma knew that wasn't the case. She was a part of this hidden world now, a world of power, ancient laws, and enemies that lurked in the shadows. Just as she was about to turn and head back inside, a figure approached from the distance. It was Lord Valerian. He walked toward her with that same calm confidence that had always unsettled her. His gaze, though, was softer today, as if he had something important to say. "You're improving," he said, his voice low and steady. "But there's something else you need to understand." Emma looked at him, the exhaustion from training still heavy in her limbs. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice cautious. Lord Valerian stopped in front of her, his intense gray eyes meeting hers. "Power isn't just about strength, Emma," he said, his tone serious. "It's about choices. Every decision you make from here on out will determine your path. It's not just about controlling the power inside you. It's about understanding the consequences of wielding it." Emma frowned, trying to make sense of his words. "Consequences?" she asked. Lord Valerian nodded slowly. "There are others who want what you have. They'll stop at nothing to get it. And you, Emma, are the key to everything." "I'm not the key to anything," she said, shaking her head. "I'm just a mother trying to survive. I don't want any part of whatever this is." Lord Valerian stepped closer, his expression softening. "You've already become a part of it," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You can't undo what's been done, but you can choose how you move forward." Emma's heart raced. The weight of his words hit her like a tidal wave. What did he mean by that? She had already stepped into a world that was beyond her comprehension, but now he was telling her she couldn't turn back. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Lord Valerian's eyes softened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "And you don't have to do this alone. There are people who will help you, but you have to be willing to trust them." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She wanted to believe him, to believe that she could handle whatever was coming. But the fear still lingered, the fear that she wasn't enough, that she wouldn't be able to protect Luke, or even herself. "What if I fail?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if I make the wrong choice?" Lord Valerian studied her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. "There are no perfect choices," he said finally, "but you will make the best choice you can, and that will be enough." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing there in the quiet garden, the weight of his words sinking in. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: she couldn't turn back. She had to move forward, one step at a time, and face whatever came her way. Later that night, Emma lay in bed, her thoughts racing. She had come so far already, and yet, she still felt like she was standing on the edge of something she didn't fully understand. The power inside her was growing, but so was the danger. There were enemies lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. And Emma knew, deep down, that the hardest part of this new world wasn't going to be learning how to control her abilities. It was going to be facing the choices that lay ahead and deciding which path to take. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Whatever happened, she would be ready. For Luke. For herself. For whatever came next. Emma spent the next few days in a haze of training and uncertainty. Lord Valerian's words echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had been pulled into a direction she wasn't ready for. As much as she tried to focus on learning to control the growing power inside her, there was a constant unease in the pit of her stomach. She couldn't stop thinking about Luke. How could she protect him in a world she didn't understand? She was supposed to be the one keeping him safe, yet here she was, tangled in a web of ancient power, surrounded by people with abilities far beyond her own. The mansion, with its cold stone walls and endless hallways, felt like a prison. Every room she entered seemed to hold more questions than answers. She would catch glimpses of the other inhabitants of the mansion, but none of them spoke to her. They were all powerful, ancient beings, and she was just Emma, a mother, a single woman trying to do the best she could for her child. It was the night after another grueling training session that Emma found herself in the garden again, trying to clear her mind. The moonlight cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn, and the air was cool against her skin. She had been practicing her focus, trying to connect with the power within her, but it wasn't coming easily. The more she tried, the more she felt like she was swimming against the current. That was when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned and saw Lord Valerian walking toward her, his presence as commanding as always. His gray eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was a hint of warmth in his gaze. "You're struggling," he said softly. Emma felt a pang of frustration in her chest. "I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing," she admitted. "Every time I try to focus, it feels like the power just slips away. Like it's too much for me." Lord Valerian's expression remained calm, though she could see a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "It's not about forcing the power, Emma," he said, his voice low and steady. "It's about understanding it. Feeling it. The more you fight against it, the harder it becomes. You have to let go of your fear, your doubt." Emma clenched her fists at her sides. "How can I let go of my fear when everything about this world scares me?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "I don't belong here. I'm not like them. I'm just trying to survive. I don't know if I can do this." Lord Valerian took a step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly. "And you belong here more than you realize. You were chosen for a reason." Emma shook her head, feeling the weight of his words settle on her chest like a heavy stone. She wanted to believe him, to believe that she was capable of doing whatever this world required of her. But it was hard. Every day, she was confronted with her own limitations, her own fears. "I'm not ready," she whispered. "I'm just a mother." Lord Valerian's expression softened, and he stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to the fierce power he exuded. "Being a mother is one of the strongest things you can be," he said. "And it's that strength, that love for your son, that will make you unstoppable. Never forget that." Emma looked up at him, searching his eyes for any hint of doubt, but there was none. His conviction was absolute. "You're not alone in this," he continued. "You have allies, people who will help you. But you must trust them, and you must trust yourself." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She didn't know if she could ever fully trust herself in this new world, but for Luke, she would try. She would have to. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. "But I'll try." Lord Valerian gave her a small, approving nod. "That's all anyone can ask of you." As the night stretched on, Emma found herself staring out at the garden, her mind still racing with questions. Could she really become the person she needed to be? Could she learn to control the power inside her? She didn't know. But for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she could do this. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as powerless as she had always believed. The next morning, Emma was once again in the training room, her body aching from the previous day's session. But today was different. Today, she would focus, not on the power itself, but on the connection. She had spent so much time trying to control it, trying to bend it to her will, that she had forgotten to listen. She had forgotten to feel. As she closed her eyes and breathed deeply, she let go of the fear that had been clinging to her. She opened herself up to the power, feeling it, connecting with it. It was a slow process, but something shifted inside her. For the first time, she felt the power stir beneath her skin, not as a force to be controlled, but as a part of her. She was starting to understand. She wasn't fighting the power anymore. She was learning to work with it. And that, she realized, was the first step in becoming who she needed to be. The days passed, and Emma felt herself beginning to change in ways she had never imagined. Each training session left her more exhausted than the last, but the exhaustion was no longer just physical. It was mental, emotional, too. The power that had awakened inside her was no longer a distant, intimidating force. It was a part of her, growing stronger every day. But with that power came the weight of responsibility. Responsibility that Emma was still struggling to comprehend. She had always believed that her life would be about survival, about making it through one more day. But now, it was about something more, something much bigger than her. And every step she took toward understanding it felt like a step deeper into a world that threatened to swallow her whole. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the mansion's gardens were bathed in the golden light of twilight, Emma found herself standing at the edge of the stone fountain. She had come here to clear her mind, to find some peace in the solitude of the garden. But as she looked out across the landscape, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The quiet hum of the mansion, the sound of distant footsteps echoing in the halls, all seemed to fade as the night drew closer. It was then that Lord Valerian appeared, as if summoned by the very air around them. His presence was imposing, but tonight, there was something different about him. He seemed softer, less distant than he had been in the past. "You've made progress," he said, his voice low and steady. "But there's more you need to understand. It's not just about controlling the power. It's about understanding the responsibility that comes with it." Emma turned to face him, her heart racing as she tried to keep her emotions in check. "I don't know if I can handle all of this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just a mother. I don't know how to be a part of this world." Lord Valerian's gaze softened, and he stepped closer. For the first time since she had arrived, he didn't seem like the cold, powerful figure she had come to fear. Instead, he looked almost human. "You're not just a mother, Emma," he said quietly. "You are a force. You were chosen for a reason, and you have the strength to face whatever comes your way." Emma shook her head, the doubt still weighing heavily on her chest. "I don't feel strong," she admitted. "I feel lost." Lord Valerian studied her for a long moment, his eyes intense and unwavering. "That's because you're looking for something outside of yourself," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The strength you need is already inside you. It always has been." The words hung in the air between them, and for the first time, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she wasn't as powerless as she had always believed. Maybe there was more to her than just the woman she saw in the mirror. "But what if I fail?" she asked, the fear creeping back into her voice. "What if I'm not enough?" Lord Valerian reached out, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "You will fail," he said, his voice soft. "And that's okay. Failure is a part of this. But it's how you rise from it that matters." Emma took a shaky breath, the weight of his words sinking in. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't know if I can live up to what you're asking of me." Lord Valerian smiled, but it was a small, almost sad smile. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Emma," he said. "I'm asking you to be yourself. To trust in who you are, and to trust in the power that's inside you." For a moment, there was silence between them, the night air cool against Emma's skin. The distant sounds of the mansion seemed to fade as she processed his words. She didn't need to be perfect. She didn't need to have all the answers. She just needed to trust herself, trust the power that had always been a part of her. As she looked up at Lord Valerian, she felt a shift inside her. A weight had lifted, and for the first time since she had entered this world, she felt like she could breathe. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady now. "I think I understand." Lord Valerian nodded, his expression unreadable. "The road ahead won't be easy," he said. "There will be obstacles, challenges, and enemies you can't foresee. But if you trust in yourself, you will find a way to face them." Emma nodded, feeling a surge of determination welling up inside her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone in this. Not anymore. The next few days were a blur of training, lessons, and moments of quiet reflection. Emma was learning more about herself than she had ever expected. She was learning to control the power inside her, to understand its nuances, its strengths, and its weaknesses. But even as she grew stronger, She couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. She could feel it in the air, like a storm on the horizon. Something was about to change. Something that would test everything she had learned, everything she had become. But for the first time, Emma was ready. She had the strength, the will, and the courage to face whatever was coming. And no matter what happened, she would protect Luke. That was the one thing she could be sure of. Emma stood at the window, gazing out over the sprawling estate. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the gardens and the stone pathways. She had been here for weeks now, and yet, every day felt like a new beginning. The power inside her had grown, but so had the challenges. Lord Valerian had warned her that this world was full of dangers, ones she could never have imagined. But she was ready, or at least, she thought she was. She had been training relentlessly, honing her abilities with every ounce of determination she had. Each day brought new lessons, new techniques to master, and yet she knew that her training was only the beginning. Something bigger was coming, something that would test everything she had learned. The air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. She could feel it, just beneath the surface, the storm that had been brewing for so long. And she knew, deep down, that it was only a matter of time before it hit. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She turned, startled, but quickly composed herself. "Enter," she called out, trying to steady her breath. The door opened, and in walked Lord Valerian, his presence as commanding as ever. He stood tall, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with something Emma couldn't quite place. She nodded, though her heart was beating faster now. "I think so," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "I've been training, learning to control the power. But I know it's not enough." Lord Valerian stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "It never is," he said softly. "The real test is not in the power you wield, but in the choices you make when everything seems to be falling apart." Emma swallowed hard, his words hitting her harder than she expected. She had been so focused on controlling the power that she hadn't thought much about what would happen when she had to face the consequences of her choices. "I'm afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I make the wrong choice? What if I fail?" Lord Valerian looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of something softer in his eyes, perhaps empathy, perhaps understanding. "We all fail," he said quietly. "It's how we rise from that failure that defines us." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind inside her. She had to trust him. She had to trust herself. "I won't fail," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I can't. For Luke, for everything I've fought for, I can't fail." Lord Valerian nodded, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Good," he said, his tone more approving than she had expected. "But remember, this world doesn't play by the same rules you're used to. You will face decisions that will break you, and people who will try to destroy you. But you can handle it. I believe in you." Emma felt a surge of something deep inside her at his words. It wasn't just the power within her. It was something else, something she hadn't recognized before. She had always been strong, even in the hardest of times. This was just another challenge, another fight she had to win. "What's coming?" she asked, her voice firm. "You said something was coming. What is it?" Lord Valerian's expression grew darker. "Enemies," he said simply. "There are those who want the power you hold. They will stop at nothing to take it from you. And when the time comes, you will have to face them. But you will not face them alone." Emma felt a chill run down her spine at his words. Enemies? She hadn't considered that the very power that had changed her life could also make her a target. But the fear she had felt earlier was quickly replaced by something else, resolve. She wasn't going to let anyone take what she had fought for. She wasn't going to let anyone take Luke from her. "How do I prepare for this?" she asked, determination in her voice. Lord Valerian stepped back, his eyes never leaving hers. "We will prepare together," he said. "You will learn what you need to survive, to fight. And when the time comes, you will stand tall. You'll protect yourself, and you'll protect those you love." Emma nodded, her resolve hardening. She had no idea what was coming, but she would face it head on. She had to. For Luke. For herself. "When will it happen?" she asked. "Soon," Lord Valerian replied, his voice darkening. "And when it does, you will need to be ready." Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever was coming next. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She wasn't just a woman caught in the web of powers she didn't understand. She was something more, something stronger. And when the storm hit, she would be ready to fight back. Whatever came next, she would face it. She would protect what was hers, no matter the cost. The days seemed to blur together for Emma as she continued her rigorous training. Each day brought new challenges, new lessons, and a growing sense of responsibility that weighed heavily on her shoulders. She had always been a fighter, but this was different. This world she had been thrust into was more dangerous, more complex than anything she had ever known. Her training with Lord Valerian had become more intense as he pushed her to tap deeper into the power that resided within her. The mansion, once a place of quiet unease, had become a training ground. Every hallway, every corner, a reminder of the task ahead. But Emma was determined. She couldn't afford to fail, not when so much was at stake. Luke was always at the forefront of her mind. The thought of him kept her moving, kept her from succumbing to the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She had promised herself she would protect him, no matter the cost. One evening, after another grueling session, Emma found herself alone in the library, surrounded by ancient tomes and scrolls. She had been studying the old texts, searching for answers to the questions that still lingered in her mind. What was the true extent of her power? How could she control it without it consuming her? And most importantly, what was coming? She was lost in her thoughts when Lord Valerian appeared, his presence as commanding as ever. His dark eyes met hers, and she felt the familiar weight of his gaze. "You've been training hard," he said, his voice low and measured. Emma nodded, feeling a mix of exhaustion and determination. "I have to," she replied. "I can't afford to be weak. Not when I know what's coming." Lord Valerian took a step closer, his expression unreadable. "You're not weak, Emma, but you need to understand something." She looked up at him, her brow furrowed in curiosity. "What do I need to understand?" she asked. "Power is not just about strength," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It's about control. It's about knowing when to fight and when to hold back." Emma's heart raced as his words settled in her mind. She had been so focused on the idea of fighting, of using her power to protect herself and Luke. But what if there was more to it? What if the key wasn't in fighting at all? "I don't know if I can control it," she said quietly. "I feel like I'm always on the edge of losing control. What if it takes over?" Lord Valerian studied her for a long moment, his gaze never leaving hers. "It will take over if you let it," he said, his tone unwavering. "But you have the strength to control it. You just need to trust yourself." Emma closed her eyes, trying to absorb his words. Trust herself. It was something she had never done. She had always been so focused on survival, on getting through the next day, that she had never taken a moment to trust her own instincts. But now, as the power within her grew stronger, she knew that she had to learn how. She had to learn to trust in her own abilities, to believe that she was capable of handling whatever came next. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Lord Valerian's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Emma saw a flicker of something she hadn't expected: compassion. "You are stronger than you think," he said, his voice gentle now. "And you are not alone in this. You have allies, people who will stand by you when the time comes." Emma looked up at him, her heart pounding. Who are they? Who else is a part of this world? Lord Valerian hesitated for a moment, his expression darkening. "There are many who have lived in the shadows for centuries," he said. "Some are allies. Others, not so much." Emma felt a chill run down her spine at his words. Allies, enemies. She had no idea who to trust, or who was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. But she knew one thing. She had to be ready. "How do I prepare for this?" she asked, her voice steady now. Lord Valerian gave a small, approving nod. "You've already begun," he said. "The first step is understanding that this power is a part of you. It doesn't define you, but it is a part of who you are." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She had to stop seeing the power as something separate from herself, something she had to control. She had to accept it, to make it her own. "The second step," Lord Valerian continued, "is learning to make the hard choices, the ones that will define your path." Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Hard choices. She had already made some difficult decisions, but the ones that lay ahead would be nothing like what she had faced before. "What kind of choices?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lord Valerian's gaze hardened. "The kind that will test your very soul. The kind that will force you to decide what you're willing to sacrifice." Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling on her chest like a heavy stone. She wasn't sure if she was ready for what lay ahead, but she had no choice. She had to be. For Luke. For herself. "I'll be ready," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I have to be." Lord Valerian gave her a long, searching look before turning to leave. "Remember, Emma," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "The world you've entered is full of shadows, but you have the power to light the way. You just have to believe it." As he disappeared into the shadows of the mansion, Emma stood there, her heart racing with uncertainty. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: she would face it head-on, whatever the cost. The tension in the mansion was palpable. Each day that passed seemed to bring Emma closer to an inevitable clash. The power inside her had grown stronger, and with it came a rising sense of urgency. She could feel the storm on the horizon. The enemies Lord Valerian had warned her about were not just shadows anymore. They were real, and they were closing in. She spent her days training, learning to refine her abilities and control the growing power within her. Every motion, every thought, seemed to fuel the force that lived inside her. But there was always a nagging feeling in the back of her mind, a constant reminder that no matter how much she trained, it would never be enough if she couldn't make the right decisions when the time came. She had been training in the Grand Hall, practicing her focus when she felt Lord Valerian's presence approach. He was silent as always, his footsteps light but sure as he drew near. She didn't look up immediately, but felt him stop beside her. "You're ready," he said, his voice low. "You have no more time for hesitation. They will be here soon." Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady the pounding in her chest. She was ready, but was she? The thought haunted her. "I'm ready," she said, more to herself than to him, trying to convince herself that it was true. She turned to face him, meeting his gaze. There was no fear in his eyes, just the unwavering certainty she had come to expect. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice firm but laced with a thread of anxiety. "Now," Lord Valerian said, "we prepare for what's coming." His tone was colder now, more serious. "You'll face them tonight." The words hung heavy in the air between them. "Tonight," Emma repeated, disbelief flashing across her face. "I'm not ready. I need more time." "Time is a luxury we no longer have," Lord Valerian replied, his voice steely. "The longer we wait, the stronger they grow. You'll face them head-on, and you'll fight. But it's not just about strength. It's about choices." Emma felt her heart race. She had trained her entire life for moments like this, yet nothing could have prepared her for the weight of Lord Valerian's words. Tonight was the night. There was no more hiding, no more training. She would face the enemies he had warned her about, the ones who wanted her power. She couldn't run. Not anymore. She had made promises to herself and to Luke. She would not fail. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice more controlled now. Lord Valerian nodded slightly, as if pleased with her resolve. "You must stand your ground," he said. "You will not face them alone. There are allies you have yet to meet, others who share this burden with you. But it will be you who must decide the outcome. The choices you make will determine who survives." Emma nodded, taking in his words. She had to fight. There was no other option. And as much as the fear gnawed at her, she knew that she was ready. She had no choice but to be. Later that evening, the mansion felt darker, quieter. Emma could feel it in the air, the calm before the storm. She moved through the halls, her every step purposeful. Her mind was sharp, focused. She couldn't afford to let her emotions get in the way of what had to be done. She had a mission: to protect herself, to protect Luke, and to survive whatever was coming. The weight of the task ahead was heavy, but she was ready. She stepped into the courtyard where Lord Valerian had instructed her to meet the others. They were waiting for her. Standing near the shadows, their faces hidden, were figures she didn't recognize. They were part of this world, part of the secret society she had become a part of, but they were still strangers to her. One by one, they stepped forward, their expressions unreadable. There was a man with dark hair and sharp features who moved like a predator. A woman with long, silvery hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. Another man stood tall, his presence commanding as he watched her with an intensity that reminded her of Lord Valerian. "These are your allies," Lord Valerian said, stepping up beside her. "They will fight with you tonight. Together, you'll face the enemy." Emma nodded, trying to steady the storm of nerves inside her. She didn't know these people. She didn't know if she could trust them. But she had to. There was no other choice. "We fight together," she said, her voice steady. The others didn't respond immediately. They simply nodded, each one sizing her up, assessing her, as if judging whether she was truly ready for what lay ahead. Lord Valerian's presence was a constant, like an anchor she could hold on to. "Follow my lead," he said, his voice calm. "When the time comes, you will know what to do." Emma's heart pounded in her chest, but she squared her shoulders and held her head high. She was no longer the scared woman who had stumbled into this world. She was someone new, someone stronger. She had no choice but to face what was coming, and she would fight, no matter what. The enemy would come for her, for the power inside her, but they would not take it easily. Tonight, she would show them that she was ready to take her place in this world. The battle had begun. The night had fallen, thick with tension and anticipation. Emma stood in the courtyard with her new allies, her heart pounding in her chest. The time had come. The enemies Lord Valerian had warned her about were no longer just shadows in the distance. They were here, and the first wave was approaching fast. The moon hung high in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the garden. Emma's mind raced as she tried to steady her breathing. This was no longer about training. No longer about learning how to control the power inside her. This was the real thing. The battle she had been preparing for. Lord Valerian stood next to her, his posture rigid and his expression unreadable. He seemed to exude an air of quiet confidence, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling within Emma. The others, the ones who had joined her in the fight, were scattered around her, each one poised and ready for the coming conflict. They were powerful in their own right, each with their unique abilities. Yet, despite their strength, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of isolation. She had never truly been a part of their world. They were strangers to her, and their trust was something she had yet to earn. But tonight, there would be no time for doubts. The enemy was closing in. The ground beneath her feet felt as though it was vibrating with the weight of impending chaos. Then a whisper, a dark presence on the wind. "They're here," Lord Valerian said, his voice barely audible but sharp as a blade. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. The air had thickened, as though the very atmosphere was holding its breath in anticipation. She could feel it now, an energy unlike anything she had ever experienced. The power inside her thrummed, pulling her in different directions. Was it fear? Or was it something more primal, something deep within her, urging her to fight? She didn't know. But there was no turning back now. Lord Valerian gave her one final look before he turned, his dark cloak sweeping behind him as he strode forward, his movements swift and purposeful. The others followed in his wake, falling into formation. Emma stood frozen for a moment, the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her. She had to keep moving. She had to be ready. Without another thought, she fell in line, her steps quick and purposeful as she joined the others. The battle began almost immediately. From the darkness, figures emerged, figures unlike any human she had ever seen. Tall, menacing, with eyes that gleamed like molten gold and skin as pale as death itself. The vampires, Lord Valerian's enemies. The ones who would stop at nothing to take the power she had been given. As they approached, Emma could feel the air grow colder. She could feel the pull of their dark energy, the danger in their every step. These were not just mindless creatures. They were calculating, ruthless, and they wanted her power. The first strike came fast. One of the vampires lunged toward her, his claws extending in the blink of an eye. But Emma was ready. The power inside her surged to life, and she instinctively raised her hand, sending a wave of energy crashing toward him. The vampire howled as the energy hit him, sending him flying back into the shadows. She could feel the strain of it, the energy draining from her as quickly as it had come, but there was no time to rest. Another vampire was coming for her, this one faster, stronger. She barely had time to react before he was upon her, his sharp teeth aimed for her throat. But again, Emma reached deep within herself. The power surged, this time in a burst of flame that engulfed the vampire in a blinding light. he screamed, stumbling back, his skin searing from the force of the fire. Emma felt a flicker of triumph before the darkness began to close in around her again. The battle raged on, each strike more desperate than the last. She could hear the cries of the other fighters, the clash of power against power. Her allies were holding their ground, but they were outnumbered. Emma fought with everything she had, each movement driven by her desire to survive, to protect those she loved. And then, she saw him, the leader of the vampires. Taller, more imposing than the others, with eyes that glowed a deep, unnatural red. Lord Valerian's rival, the one who had been pulling the strings from the shadows. He was standing across the courtyard, his gaze locked on her, as if he had been waiting for this moment. His smile was cold, calculating, and it made Emma's blood run cold. "You're the one," he said, his voice smooth like silk. "The one who has awakened the power. The one who is meant to fall." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She knew this would be the hardest fight of all, but she was ready. With a determined breath, she stepped forward, meeting his gaze with a fierce intensity. She would not let him win. Not today. The battle was far from over, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going down without a fight, and she would protect what was hers, no matter the cost. The air was thick with the sounds of battle, the clash of power echoing through the night. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she stood facing the vampire leader, the one who had been pulling the strings from the shadows. He was everything she had feared, and more. His red eyes gleamed with an unsettling confidence, and his smile was like ice, cold and calculating. He stepped forward, his movements fluid, like a predator circling its prey. Emma's body tensed, every instinct screaming at her to prepare for the fight of her life. "You really think you can stop me?" the vampire leader sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're just a human, a mere pawn in a game you don't even understand." Emma's grip tightened around the energy that swirled within her. He was wrong. She wasn't just a pawn. She had power, real power, and she would use it to protect everything she had fought for. "I'm not just a human," she said, her voice steady, though every fiber of her being was on edge. "And I won't let you take what's mine." The vampire leader laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "You don't even know what you're up against. The power you wield is nothing compared to what I can command." Emma felt a surge of anger and fear ripple through her, but she didn't back down. She had come too far to give up now. She had trained, learned, and pushed herself past every limit she thought she had. The power inside her surged, and she let it flow, harnessing it into a burst of fiery energy that she sent hurtling toward him. He dodged with ease, moving like liquid darkness, his smile never wavering. "Is that all?" he taunted. "You're going to have to do better than that." Emma's heart raced, but she didn't hesitate. She was done holding back. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, centering herself, feeling the pulse of the energy within her, the ancient power that had awakened in her veins. It was not just strength, it was a force, a connection to something far older, something deeper than she could comprehend. She opened her eyes, and this time, she didn't just attack. She let the power flow through her, twisting and shaping into something more precise, more dangerous. She raised her hands, and the ground beneath them trembled. The vampire leader's smirk faltered for the first time, but he recovered quickly. He lunged toward her, his fangs bared, but Emma was ready. She summoned the power, and the ground erupted in a burst of energy, sending him flying backward. He landed on the ground, a growl escaping his throat as he quickly regained his footing. His eyes glowed brighter now, a deep crimson. "You think you've won?" he snarled, his voice filled with rage. "You're just beginning to understand what you're up against." He moved toward her with a speed that made her gasp, but Emma was faster. She extended her hands, unleashing a torrent of energy that collided with him, the force of it sending shockwaves through the courtyard. He staggered back, his body smoking from the intensity of the blow. Emma's chest heaved with exertion, but she didn't stop. This was her moment. She was done running. The vampire leader staggered, but his eyes never left hers, his expression twisted with fury. "You think this changes anything? You can't defeat me. No one can." Emma's voice was steady as she replied, "I don't have to defeat you. I just have to survive." The words were barely out of her mouth when the vampire leader lunged again, faster than before, his fangs aiming for her throat. But Emma wasn't alone. From the shadows, Lord Valerian appeared, his presence a commanding force that made the air crackle with energy. He intercepted the vampire leader's attack, his movements precise and powerful. The two forces collided with a deafening noise, a clash of darkness and light. The ground beneath them trembled as they fought, their battle echoing through the night. Emma stood frozen for a moment, her heart racing as she watched the fight unfold before her. She had no time to hesitate. She had to act. With a deep breath, she focused again, summoning all the power within her. It was time to end this. She stepped forward, her hands glowing with the energy she had learned to control. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she had no choice. She reached out and channeled her power, directing it with all her strength. The energy surged forward, more powerful than ever before, and it collided with the vampire leader, sending him crashing to the ground. He didn't get up. For a moment, everything was still. The air was heavy with the aftermath of the battle. Emma's chest heaved, her body trembling from the exertion, but she stood tall. She had done it. They had done it. The enemy was down, and they had survived. Lord Valerian turned to her, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Emma saw something in his gaze, approval. "You've done well," he said, his voice low but filled with something like respect. Emma nodded, her heart still racing, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There would be more battles, more enemies, and more choices to be made. But for now, she had won. And that was enough. The battle was over, but the victory felt hollow. Emma stood in the center of the courtyard, her body trembling from the intense fight. But it wasn't the physical exhaustion that weighed on her. It was the uncertainty that lingered in the air, the uneasy realization that this moment of peace was only temporary. She had faced her enemies, fought with everything she had, and yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. Lord Valerian stood beside her, his gaze sweeping over the wreckage of the courtyard, his expression unreadable. His battle had been fierce, his strikes swift and precise, but even he seemed to be absorbing the weight of what had just happened. He turned to Emma, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time, she saw something in them that wasn't just the cold command she had grown used to. It was approval, but with a touch of something deeper, something more personal. "You did well," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Better than I expected." Emma nodded, not sure how to respond. She had done well, yes, but at what cost? She had used her power, faced the dark forces that had been sent to destroy her, but she had also tapped into something she didn't fully understand. The power that coursed through her veins was still so unfamiliar. It was as though it had a life of its own, and she was only just learning to control it. "But it's not over," she said, her voice steady despite the unease that lingered in her chest. "There's more coming, isn't there?" Lord Valerian didn't reply immediately, but his gaze hardened as he looked out over the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to break through the night. "There will always be more," he said finally. "This world is filled with threats, some we can see, some we can't. But now you know what you're capable of. You know that you can stand your ground." Emma took a deep breath, the weight of his words sinking in. She had proven herself in battle, but she was still far from the person she needed to be. She had learned to control the power within her, but she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. "I'm not sure I'm ready for everything that's ahead," she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've fought, I've survived, but I'm still scared." Lord Valerian stepped closer, his presence a constant reassurance in the chaos of the world around them. "Being scared doesn't make you weak," he said, his voice firm. "It makes you human. The key is knowing how to use that fear, to let it fuel you, not hold you back." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She had always been afraid of losing herself, afraid of the power inside her that she didn't fully understand. But maybe he was right. Maybe fear could be a tool, something that could drive her forward, something that could make her stronger. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the moment of silence, and Emma turned to see the other allies stepping forward, their expressions serious but respectful. They had fought alongside her, and they had seen what she was capable of. They were the ones who would stand beside her in the battles to come. "We've won this battle," one of them said, a tall man with dark eyes and a commanding presence. "But there's a war ahead." Emma met his gaze, her heart steadying with the realization. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I'm ready, she said, her voice firm. Whatever comes next, I'm ready. Lord Valerian gave her a nod of approval, his gaze softening just a fraction. You've come a long way, Emma, he said. But remember, strength isn't just about power. It's about making the right choices. And those choices will shape the future of this world. Emma looked at her allies, each of them standing tall, ready for what was to come. She had learned so much, but she knew the hardest part was yet to come. The power she wielded was dangerous, but it was hers to control. The responsibility weighed heavily on her, but she would bear it. For Luke, for herself, for the world that depended on her. As the first rays of sunlight began to pierce the dark sky, Emma felt a surge of determination. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a fighter, a protector, a force to be reckoned with. And whatever battles lay ahead, she would face them head-on, ready to fight, ready to make the choices that would shape her destiny. The journey was far from over, but Emma was no longer afraid. She was ready. And as the world around her began to stir with the promise of a new day, she knew that this was just the beginning.